Hi, this is Justin Coletti of SonicScoop. Thanks for joining me for some more MixCon 2021. And today we've got a masterclass from a 7-time Grammy winner, Brian Vibberts. Brian has worked across genres. He's worked with everyone from Mariah Carey and Billie Eilish and Lauryn Hill to Green Day and Metallica and Aerosmith. He's worked with Sting and Billy Joel and Michael Jackson. He's worked with hip-hop greats like Jay-Z and jazz greats like Chick Corea. And today he's going to be giving us a super deep and detailed MixCon masterclass. One of the most deep and detailed I think we've ever done. I think you're going to enjoy this one. He's going to be going deep into a mix that actually uses a lot of acoustic instruments, which is a nice rare treat for us in MixCon. You'll hear some great acoustic guitars in here, some pedal steel, some beautiful vocals as well from singer Carrie Flaherty. Before we get into it, a big shout out and thanks to our sponsors that make all of these MixCon presentations totally free to the public. And the sponsor on this one is a perfect fit. It is Antelope Audio. Brian has, I think, more than a half a dozen pieces of higher end Antelope gear in his studio. He's got the Goliath HD. He's got the Galaxy 64. I saw him with a 10MX for clocking. I saw a couple of Orions in there and more. They were his favorite solutions for converters and clocking. And even though he's on a Pro Tools HD system that has its own extra DSP processing power built in, he also makes use of the DSP processing built into some of these Antelope Audio interfaces, using them as hardware inserts in his Pro Tools HD system to get even more power out of some of the great sounding Antelope effects that come with a lot of these interfaces. I'm actually speaking into a microphone right now that has some of that technology built in. This is the Axino, which is probably, I think, the most affordable standalone modeling mic out there. It's really incredible. Right now I'm talking into a Neumann model and one of my favorite compressors, a Summit Audio TLA 100A. And there's so many mic models in there, and you wouldn't believe the price point in this. I'm going to be doing an entire demonstration on this as part of MixCon very soon, so keep your eyes open for that. We've also got the MixCon Mega Giveaway going, where you got 3 chances to win thousands upon thousands of dollars worth of audio gear. Check that out over at sonicscoop.com/MixCon giveaway. That's sonicscoop.com/MixCon giveaway. Last, certainly not least, Brian Vibberts, who's about to do this presentation. He's going to be doing a live Q&A immediately after the conclusion of the live premiere. He'll be answering your questions in real time. If you're watching this during the premiere, you can actually enter your questions right into the live chat over on the right-hand side of your screen. We'll be collecting the very best ones to ask Brian in real time right after this ends. So look for that link on your screen down below where you can check out the Q&A with Brian in its entirety, either live if you're seeing this during the premiere, or, of course, all the stuff will be available on replay if you're a visitor from the future. Hello, visitors from the future. All right, without further ado, let's get right into it. Mr. Brian Vibberts, take it away.
Hi, I'm Brian Vibberts from Vibberts Mixing, and today I am going to do something that I've never done before. I've done kind of bits and pieces, but I've never gone through a mix track by track in my studio, explaining everything that I'm doing with the plugins, with the outboard gear, all my decisions of how I'm mixing. So that's what we're going to do today. Now, in terms of the music that I do, I mix from rock to pop, country to world music, TV and film scores. So I kind of do everything. Today we're going to be doing an alternative country song and singer-songwriter style by Carrie Flaherty called The Other Side. That's the name of the song. And what I'm really going to show you is how I'm getting the emotion out of the mix. If I had to, out of all those styles I just mentioned, if there was any one common part of my mixing style, it would be that I'm getting the most emotion out of the mix, or the most mood out of the music. If it's something that's instrumental like Chick Corea or Jennifer Thomas, where there's no vocalist, I'm getting the most out of the music, the most feel and emotion. So we'll be going through that as well. So first, I want to just kind of give you a simple layout of what I have here, what I'm using for equipment. I have a hybrid setup, so it's digital and analog. I use a lot of plugins, but I also use a lot of gear. I use digital reverbs like the Bricasti. I also use analog summing with the Chandler Limited and the Rupert Neve designs, and I'm using that in this mix. And of course, the main brains of the studio in terms of converters are the Antelope Audio Galaxy 64, which is down here, and the Goliath HD, which is here. And that's digitally clocked through the atomic clock and the Trinity. So everything is synchronized. And since I've been doing since 2004, everything is at 96K, and I'm at 32-bit on this session. Before we get right into it, why don't I play the song so you can hear it, and then we'll start going through track by track.
I wanna go to the other side, just for the day, to see your face and hear what you would say. I know you both were tough and fought in the war, but I wish I got the chance to know you more. Is it possible to miss grandpas you never met? But all the stories of you I'll never forget. 'Cause all of you is in all of me. But sometimes it's hard to stay happy when I think of all the times I've cried and wanted you right by my side. I'm sure by now that you get the gist, that you sure are missed. The beginning of my life, you were my best friend, but after a few short years, our friendship had to end. Years after that, you called your son home, and they don't make them like you no more, Uncle Joe. I can still see your smile, you would light up the room like the flowers near your birthday in full bloom. 'Cause all of you is in all of me. Sometimes it's hard to stay happy when I think of all the times I've cried and wanted you right by my side. I'm sure by now that you get the gist, that you sure are missed. And as for my great-grandma, you're my biggest inspiration. I wish I had a time machine so I could go back and say it, for all you went through and hell that you'd seen. You took the devil's candy and turned the bad times into sweet. And all of you is in all of me. Sometimes it's hard to stay happy when I think of all the times I've cried and wanted you right by my side. I'm sure by now that you get the gist, that you sure are missed. I wanna go to the other side, just for the day, to see your face and hear what you'd say.
A great song, great performance by Carey. This song called The Other Side is about, other loved ones that have, moved on to the other side. I think, everyone can relate to this. It's a great song. So I wanted to bring the, the best lyrical parts out and make sure that the listener doesn't miss anything as they're listening. Now that you've heard the song, we'll go through, how I approach this mix. So the very first thing that I do after I get all the tracks in the Pro Tools setup is I listen to the demo, because I want to hear what was the artist and producer listening to when they were finished tracking. In this song, it's fairly straightforward. But for instance, if there was a song that had a lot of keyboards and also a lot of guitars, a song could be mixed a million ways. So is it more guitar based? Is it more, keyboard based? So I can tell that from the rough mix. So I make sure that I go in the right direction. And of course, I have conversations with the artist, so I know where they want to go with the music and the song and them as an artist. So the first thing I would do is listen to the demo, and I can just play a little piece of that for you, just so you have an idea. This is just a piece of the demo mix.
What you would say. I know you both were tough and fought in the war, but I wish I got the chance to know you more.
Let me go to a refrain.
Happy when I think of all the times I've cried and wanted you right by my side. I'm sure by now that you get the gist, that you sure are missed.
So it shows the basics of the song, that's all there, but it's not a full finished mix yet. So from there, what I do is I listen through the demo and I make the markers, but then I'm also making notes of ideas that come to my head, like you might see over here on the screen, on the markers right here, it says different vocal reverb. Of course, I say when the solos will be. Right here, different vocal reverb. These are just ideas that I had. Fade out guitars. So there's some ideas that I write in the markers, but then I'm also writing down on a piece of paper when I'm listening some delay ideas or some panning things, more creative ideas that I have, because engineering is half technical and half creative. So in that first listening experience for me, I want to write down some of my creative thoughts, because soon after that, I'm going to go into the technical, as you'll see, and I want to make sure that I don't forget any of those first impressions that I had of, how I want to create some great soundscapes with the song. So next, as you'll see, I'll go up here on the session. This is the actual session. You'll see that there's some things that are still there. I can explain a few things as we go. This is up here, I just have a phase scope there just in case I need to see if something is in phase, or sometimes I'll get stereo tracks especially from Logic, that are actually still mono, but the way it exports out of Logic, sometimes they all become stereo. So I just make sure that it actually is a stereo track. If it's not, then I split it into mono tracks and just use the mono. You'll see one thing that I do is making VCA groups, which is right here. These are all the kick tracks. All of those are fed by a master group. So all of my level can actually be done here. As you see here, these are the kick tracks, and I can move them all at the same time. So these are all the different sounds that are combined, and once I get that really good kick combination sound of the different mics, now I can move it all up equally with one fader. And of course, you'll see on the screen, that's automated. So for now, let's take off the group and let's hear some of these. I think I'll just leave the plugins in, but I'll show you the plugins, what I'm doing. We can take those on and off. This is a kick-in close mic. I'll play it and I'll show you some of the plugins first. What I'm doing here and this is a general rule of how I mix, is the first thing I want to do on any track, on any sound, is to take out any flaws in the sound, like creaking in or guitar noise with finger noise with the guitar. Remove that. Remove any unwanted frequencies or resonances that are in the sound that I don't want in the mix. A de-esser would count in that way. Get rid of all that stuff first, so you know, okay, this is now a better sounding recording or a place where I want to go with it. And then after that, then I usually do a little bit of compression if needed. And then after compression, then I do my additive EQ. So I'm doing subtractive EQ first, and any fixes that I need to do with the sound, and then I build upon that. I don't want to build upon it first and then get rid of the unwanted frequencies, because then I'm just boosting all the stuff that I don't want first, and it doesn't really make a lot of sense. So the Fab filter is awesome for these notches that I have here. We'll see here on the kick, I have one at 59. Another 114, and what's going on over here? There's not a lot of like smack in this kick anyway, but I'm reducing that. And then after that, you can see here now, this is the additive. I'm bringing up 87 hertz or 67 hertz. And then I'm bringing down the mid-range here a bit, because that just kind of gets a little bit too woofy. And then more of that attack up here. Like I say, this recorded mic doesn't have a lot of attack there anyway. I'm trying to get what I can. And then also I've found this, the Brainworks BX Boom from Plug-in Alliance, that's really awesome. It either works or it doesn't. Sometimes it just gets way too big, so you kind of have to be careful to see what happens. But right now it's boosting the low, that you can do low, a mid, or high on that, I believe. Let's see, changing. There we go. So it goes, you can go the high part of the lows, mid, or the lows, that's like the subs. So I'm doing the sub there, just give it a little more oomph. You might want to hear what it sounds like without any of that. So let's do that for a second. So on the second kick mic here, I'm doing more, actually it's the same notches with the EQ. Once I get that EQ, the notches for the certain part of the drums, usually they carry on, I just bring it down to the next track. But this one now, you'll see this G1, that's part of the way I have the studio routing going, and that brings it over to the Galaxy AFX, the Galaxy 64 from Antelope Audio. So I'm using channel 1, that G1 is channel 1 over here in the AFX, and I am using the VCA 160 and also a Lang EQ on that. So you'll see that I have something here. This is, on the laptop, really this is just the control panel. There's no audio going through the laptop. This is just connected to the Galaxy 64 just for a control panel. This could be on the main computer, but for me, I go back and forth so much with changing the sound as I'm going. I don't want to be Apple tabbing between the two over and over and over and over. So I just find it, for me, it's easier just to have on a separate computer. So that is the G1 that you see there is a hardware insert. So that's just routed to, through the I/O. So you'll see over here, I'm going to bypass these first. That's just the raw recording. That brings in the 160. And that's the Lang. So what I do, there's more of the AFX coming up, but generally I'll just say that what I do here is when I save the session, I just save it, as I usually do in Pro Tools, and then there's a separate save for just all of the effects that I'm using in here, just as a one save all. And I just save it as the same thing, Carey Flaherty, the other side, mix MM2. That's what this is. So I know that I just open that session, recall this, which is like, instant, and then I'm ready to go. It's very simple. One extra step, for me, the sound of the AFX are so, amazing that the one extra step is really no big deal for me. Let's go to the kick out mic. Let's go without these first. A little bit of the same. That's the same notches. On this kick out mic, I'm using the SSL plugin with the UC1, which is an amazing tool, hardware to control the plugin. I just find it to be a fast way of getting, I can move a whole bunch of dials at the same time. It's not like with the trackball, just like one frequency or gain at a time. I can kind of do a lot of things at once. And, I'm used to working on bigger consoles, on Neves and SSLs and everything. So for me, I feel like it's more comfortable. I can do it faster. So that's over to the side over here to my left. And so let's go without it first. And just so you can see how this works, so I can control everything from the hardware over here. So all of that all together, I know we're still on the kick, but we'll get there. We'll get there. This is the kick. Now this fourth track here was a processed kick. I don't have anything on it, as you see, because it was already processed in the recording. This actually does have that smack in there. And without this track, actually, I'd probably have to build something else in, but that really gives a nice attack to the kick that I like. You couldn't use that on its own because it's just all like attack and not a lot of low end. But as a layer altogether, it works well. Okay, so let's continue with the drums. With the snare, you'll see the same thing. I make all the different layers of the snare, the bottom mic, if there's two mics on it, or if there's snare 1, snare 2, and I make them all combined together, make one snare sound that I have the VCA, again, to do here. I can bring the VCA up to bring more. This one is a little bit different than as you can see the kick, it looks like it's all the same, but on the snare, they're actually, quite different levels, and you can see how they move in relation to each other. That's very helpful. So the snare, let's take a look at this snare. You'll see here, I'm kind of bringing up some low end in that snare. Let's listen to it without first. The SPL, Transient Designer, I found really great on drums because I can really get more attack, or I can get more sustain out of it. So if I want more sustain out of the snare to be more like a, instead of a, more like a, I can get that with just this here. That's extreme, of course. But you can see where that really can do a lot with a snare or even percussion, anything that you want to add more sustain to. I love this plugin. Put all that back. Let's not destroy the mix as I go. All right, I'll try to put everything back correctly. All right, let's see. So this is another layer of the snare. Oh, actually, wait, this G2, let's go back to that just for a second, because that's going back to the AFX over here on track 2. You'll see up here I have track 1 through 16. Actually, that goes on and on and on, many, 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 many tracks. But I'm only using about 9 or 10 of them on this mix. So on this snare, I'm using a Neve style BAE 1084 and a 1023, only because I wanted to do more with the frequencies that I had available on the first one. So the beauty of plugins, I just add another one, right? So that's what I did here. I'm boosting some lows around 220 and around 360 to kind of give it a little bit of more body to the snare. But I also want a little bit more of that attack, which I'm getting around 5K, and also the little more air out of it with 10K boost. You'll see here I'm doing mostly boosting because I usually have the fab filter for any kind of reduction in frequencies that I don't want. So on the next layer, I actually use something different. I use the VCA 160. Really it's kind of a light compression, but it's just enough to give it, actually this adds some attack, and if you bring the threshold down quite a bit, you get like more of like a big attack, but it's very short. So if you're not, that's what this is kind of doing. It's more of a short. That's the compression, and then that combined with what I'm doing on the SSL, which is not much actually. There's not a lot going on the high end, but I'm bringing up, you see here, 270 and a little bit of 320. So just a little bit more low end on here. Not much, but it all helps. The snare bottom, of course, I want to get rid of most of anything that's there on the low side, you know, on the subs, but there's not a lot in the recording, so I didn't have to worry about that here. If there was a lot of low subs, I would just bring that, you know, like way up here to get rid of any kind of, you know, noise that I didn't want. I didn't say noise, frequencies. unwanted frequencies. On this, I'm also using the SPL again. That's what you can hear. It's a little low in the mix. That's what the level is. Let me bring that up a little. So as you can hear, it's just a thin, bright sound, but that's the microphone that's underneath the snare, and it's really, the purpose is really to get more of those snares in the sound of the overall snare mic. Another one of my favorite EQs is this Neve from Waves, and The 8078 is like my favorite console of all time, so I'm kind of drawn to this kind of a thing. And I'm really just kind of brightening it up just a little bit, adding a little bit of lows, even though there's not that much there in the recording, but anything will help in that department. Snare bottom 2, I'm kind of doing the same kind of thing. Instead of the 160 here, I'm using the 160 here in the session from UAD. And this is the processed snare. That's going from the SSL. It still sounds good without the SSL, but the SSL just gives it more life. And then more of the same with the SPL here. You can see I'm getting more sustain out of those snares. With that sustain up, it's almost like adding a reverb, but it's just a natural recording of the drum. So all that together in the snares.
My best friend.
Okay, a few more drum tracks and then we go on to the bass guitars, vocals, and all that fun stuff. Let's go through the hat here. You can see this is another EQ that I love from the Sony Oxford, Sonox. The Oxford EQ I feel is great for notches, similar to the Fab Filter, where I can do a very tight notch and it doesn't mess with the sound too much. Here I'm just filtering out the lows here of the hi-hat, and then it's a little bit crispy in the recording overall, so I'm just kind of bringing the high end down a little bit. And I have a boost that's happening just before I'm cutting and sometimes when I boost there, that's boosting at 5K. Sometimes there's some unwanted frequencies that get a little bit too loud, like the 3600 got a little bit harsh, so I brought that down. And then another one here at 6700. And then a little bit of compression. So then we get to the overheads, and you'll see this one looks a little bit different with the look of that audio wave compared to down here, right? Looks different. You're probably wondering why. Some of you might know why. If you see here, it looks like the plugins are inactive. Actually, they're just frozen, and I'll tell you why. Let's make this is an exact duplicate of it. I'll make this one active. If you've ever put in some plugins and your system now cannot handle it anymore, and this is a big system here with an HDX3, I mean, it's basically maxed out, so it can handle a lot, but sometimes with the plugins, it kind of can't handle it. So I'll show you what this track is, and I'll show you what I did. This is the actual processing here on this track. Again, this one and this one are the same. This is another company that I love, Acoustica Audio. Great sounding plugins, although sometimes they take up too much power. So if I have too many of these in a mix, then I need to do this trick, which is to, if you right click, so this is, I'll just tell you what happens. it'll be going, and then all of a sudden the Pro Tools stops on its own and says you have too many plugins. It can't do everything all at the same time. So if that happens, and this is what I did with what is above it here, is you can right click on whatever channel you think might be causing the issue, and you can go down to here and go freeze up to this insert. That means it will keep all of your settings that you have in the plugins, and they'll all still function in real time, but you can't change any of the parameters at that point. If you want to change parameters, then you'll need to unfreeze it to then change it and do it again. And that way, the computer is not using as much CPU power to make that happen. So I just wanted to show you that's what I'm doing. So let's go back to this and just show you what I'm doing with the overheads. Adding a little bit of high end, of course, and filtering out a little bit of the lows at 27 hertz, adding a little bit of 180, and a little bit of 1K, which I don't usually add, but you know, every recording is different. So to get around the issue of the CPU not being able to catch up, I did this trick here, freeze up to this insert. And once you do that process, that's what it ends up looking like. And that just shows that they're still working up here. They're still working, see plugin frozen, but I just can't change any of the parameters. Once I do that, I can make this one just inactive. Really, this one was just here just to show you today what I was doing and how it works. So the sound is up here. Another layer that I did for the overheads, the same tracks, and the only reason I can do a duplicate layer in this case here is because I have the delay compensation on here, or else you'll get phasing and it'll be a nightmare. So you need to make sure that they're still in phase and not going against each other if you duplicate a track in that way with audio. So on this one, I'm doing something different with this. I'm kind of changing the transients so I can get more out of that snare in the overhead mics. So let's listen to what it is without this first. I'll just click back and forth. You can hear what it's doing. You can see how it's adding punch, which I love that. I have the punch out of the snare tracks, but I use the most out of the overheads. Sometimes if I'm recording it, I like to get everything out of the overheads, not just the cymbals. I like to have the kick in there, everything. So you can just listen to the overheads, and that's a good representation of all of the drums. So if I'm recording it, that's what I kind of like to capture. If someone else records it and gives it to me, then I do some of these kind of tricks to make it a little bit more like that. After that, I am using another great one from Plugin Alliance. You see, there's a little thing going on here with me with all these Neve plugins I can see already, and the SSL over here. So here I am bringing up a little bit of 10K, and a little bit more of the 4.8, and a little bit a low end on this, trying to get a little bit of the kick. I'm also compressing, you'll see here, 6:1. Of course, all of this is going to the Percassi reverb. So let's hear these two overheads together. So let's move to the shaker. There's one shaker track, but then I did something where I made a second layer that sounds completely different. This is the shaker on its own. It was a little bit bright, and also I'm getting a little bit of the low end of the actual shake of it. There's a low thump that happens. So I'm getting rid of that here in the Fab Filter EQ, and I'm just reducing a little bit of the highs there. So it's not quite as bright, especially when I put on the mix bus EQ, which I'm bringing up some high frequencies, which I'll get to later. The shaker just kind of comes out of the mix too much. We haven't talked too much about panning yet. Most of the drums have been either up the center or obviously overheads left and right quite a bit. This one I split into two. I put let's call it the original shaker a little bit on the right, but then I made another one to put to the left that sounds completely different. Now that's the same shaker. Let me do this so they're both the same. That's the same shaker, except I'm doing more with it. Those two are the same. I'll show you here, that, right, we saw. And then the MV2, that's bringing up, in this area here, that's bringing up everything that's too low, it's bringing that volume up. Anything that gets too loud, it's kind of bringing it down. So it's just kind of squashing from both ends. This one's a very simple plugin, but really, really works well. Works great for keyboards, for synthesizers. If you have a synthesizer that has this delay built in, but you're kind of losing the delay, you can use one of these to bring up that delay and still keep it in the mix. If it's something that's already in the synth programming, not a delay that you're adding, but that is part of the sound. But the magic of this one is this Sound Toys plugin. Let's hear it with and without. So what I'm doing here is I'm making another layer, because now I'm starting to, the drums are the part of the pulse and beat of the song, but now I'm starting to get into building the soundscape with the percussion, and then we'll continue with guitars and all of that and those effects. So on this, I'm building it so I'm still have something stereo, because I like things in the stereo field, and I am not one to go full left, full right, center. I put things everywhere in the sound field. It can be like here, here, here. The great thing that what I have in my room is the attack wall from ASC, Acoustic Sciences, that really makes the room ideal for hearing all of that. So when I'm listening to something that I'm panning, I can pinpoint it. It's like it's right there. Or I can tell if it's not quite on the center line yet because of the way the room is acoustically treated. So that's a great thing. The best thing I purchased for the studio definitely would be the soundproofing and getting the room to be correct. So these two together, I don't have it so obvious in the mix, because it's just kind of an added layer and gives it a little bit of something that you kind of feel and not really in your face. So let's just go all drums all together. Here we go. Okay, so all the drums all together now are all one drum set, including the percussion. I usually put all that together. And what I'm doing here is, you'll see here, bus 63 and 64 are fed to these two. This one here is all of the drums with the processing on the individual tracks. And then here is with the L2. So I'm doing some drum bus compression, and with this I can bring, because I have it on a separate fader, I can bring the whole thing up and down. If I want less of it, I can just mute it or bring the volume of the fader down. So let me show you what that's doing. I'll just go like this. You can see where the drums just come alive. So this can be done in, if you have a mix, 0 to 100 mix parameter in an individual plugin. This is the same basic concept. I'm just putting all the drum microphones, all the drum tracks into a stereo bus. And then I just feed the stereo bus to two different aux tracks. And I have different way of bringing the volumes for those together. So that is the drums. Let's move to the bass. Here we go. So I'll just play the bass all together for a moment so you can hear it. You'll see one thing right away. Up here on these drum aux tracks, there's no real automation. If you look here, this is the same thing. All the bass, the bass DI, the amp, my processing there is all going to this VCA, the bass VCA, and that is where I do my fader rides with Avid S3 here. I don't do the rides on the individual tracks because that's my blended sound, and I want to bring the blended sound up and down. I don't want to bring just like the DI up and down, then it's like the ratio of the DI to the amp is going like this, and that makes no sense. Of course, if you're doing an effect, there's no rules. You can do something like that for an effect, but just as a general rule, that is what I do. Get the bass sound here, and then I'm making my fader rides here. So let's take a look at each layer of the bass. So that's the bass DI sound as I got it. So the first thing I did was just take out a few notches here, because these are some frequencies that weren't great in the sound, or it just was like fighting against the guitar or something. And let me show you how I would typically do this. I would typically have that soloed, and then I'll keep that frequency, but I'll bring that up. So let's do this. Let's go like this, so I don't completely mess that up. And I'll show you here. Right there, I'm starting to hear like a little woo going on, and I want to get rid of that. Of course, you know, I'm boosting it 10 or 15 dB, but that's a sound that's in there. I just have to boost it up to see where it is exactly to then bring that out. I'm usually bringing it down 3 dB. It depends on, in an acoustic guitar, sometimes there can be some really crazy resonances, and I bring those down maybe 4.5 or 5 dB, but I usually go like 3 dB down on the notches. So let's get rid of that and put that back in. You'll see here I'm doing a lot more with the lows. With the bass, you might look at this and say that's kind of strange that I'm starting to filter out anything below 42. But on this bass, I felt like it was getting in the way of the kick and some other things. So I just kind of started filtering that out. That's not something that I would do if I was doing like an R&B or hip hop track. I would probably want as much of that as possible, probably boosting 40 hertz. So it all depends on the song. Here I had two more notches. This actually was in a separate Fab Filter plugin because I think that was part of something that I did for a mix change, like mix revisions from the producer and artist. And then the LA2A, which is a great plugin for bass. To me, it just makes the notes a little bit longer, so it just kind of stays in the mix. With everything else going on, I want to hear that bass note for the whole note. And I'll explain how I'm doing the fader rides in a moment, like what my thought process is of why I'm doing that in a moment. I do add a little bit of lo-fi to the bass. This adds a little bit of, you know, that is adding a little bit of, the only thing I'm doing here is adding a little bit of that 0.2 of distortion. What that does is brings out, you know, a little bit more of that roundness of the bass, but also it's making it cut through on smaller speakers. On an iPhone, on a laptop, on the Oratones that I have here, that's how I check to make sure that I can hear the low notes of the bass on the Oratones or on, you know, any small speaker. If I can't hear the bass, then that's an instrument that's like going away out of the mix, and I don't want that. So on you know, earbuds or whatever, the lo-fi, adding that little bit of distortion, actually it's bringing up the harmonics of the bass, and then you perceive it as, oh yeah, the bass is there. Even though you might not be getting all the low frequencies, you feel like, oh yeah, the bass is there in the mix. This one was getting a little bit too heavy in the low end, so I put this dynamic EQ in. For those of you who are new to a dynamic EQ, this is an equalizer and a compressor put together. So it doesn't compress or lower the frequency that you don't want unless there's too much of it. If there's too much of it, then it brings it down. And of course, you determine what too much is with the threshold here. You can see I have the attack and release pretty quick. I don't want it to hold it too much. I just wanted to get rid of that frequency when it's played and then let go. You can see as this moves that sometimes it's doing more or less. Now, why would I use this instead of just EQing it out? Well, sometimes the bassist is playing a note that it's totally fine, it sounds good, but maybe he's laying into a note that it just kind of pops out of the mix too much. I can either do that with a fader ride, which I do sometimes, or if there's just too much of the same note popping out, then I would use this dynamic EQ. Next is the bass amp, which is this one. Okay, this one I have something different because I am kind of spreading the sound a little bit. And that's what I'm doing with the micro pitch shift. I used to use the actual hardware of this in the studio years ago. So a lot of what I do is kind of, based on things that I've done with the actual hardware. And then some of the things I do with plugins that, of course, never had any hardware. So that's the beauty of having the knowledge of the hardware before and, embracing all the new technology, which I love. So you'll see this G5 and 6, that comes over to the Galaxy 64 on 5 and 6. That's a stereo track, so I have these linked, 5 and 6, you'll see here. I have 3 different AFX units here. I have the Pultec style EQ, which I'm bring the lows up at 60. You'll see here I'm doing like a +3, not really +3, but it's a 3 at 60 with a wide Q. And then I'm also at 3, I'm boosting a little bit of that to get a little bit more of the note out of there. And then I'm using this BA31 just to get a little more roundness and grit out of it, which is really great. And then the BA6A, which is one of my favorites, I love on the bass and vocals, and so I have that as well. So I'm going to play with and without so you can hear what these are doing. I can bypass all of them, or I can bypass one at a time. So I'll bypass all for now. Let me just take the automation off for a second so you can hear this louder. Now I realize, having this go in and out, yes, the volume is changing, and we're not trying to do a perfect A/B here. There's time to do those tests, but that's not today. So, but you do hear what it's doing, bigger, rounder, obviously more volume. But that's what I'm doing with it in the mix. And then this third layer is doing a little bit more of what I was doing with this lo-fi plugin, except I'm doing the whole track really just for this purpose. And this is what I used to do, years ago before we had any plugins, is putting it into an LA2A and just kind of slamming it. Okay, you'll see that the the compression is just out of control. The gain is way up here, and I'm reducing it quite a bit. What I'm trying to do is overload the LA2A. Overloading the actual hardware unit works very, very nicely, but in the UAD model here, they've actually done a great job in, you can still do that here as well and get a little bit more, it is distortion on purpose, basically. And that also helps in bringing out the bass in very small speakers. So that is the reason for that layer. What I'll do is I'll play it without that layer, just the bass solo, but without that layer, and I'll put that layer in and out. For some of you listening in headphones, you may be like, oh, there's the bass. Oh, wait, now I can hardly hear the bass. Oh, now it's back. Because that's what its purpose is. For me in the studio here, I hear a little bit of a change, but I'm getting full frequency range out of the JBL speakers and the Genelec speakers. So I just hear it as being just a little fuller in here. let me go to why and my thinking behind my moves here. You'll see these are all manual moves. I didn't do them with the trackball. So what I'm doing is I do this in real time, making these moves, and I'm listening to the bass in the full track, and any notes that are played that just naturally are less volume, I boost those up. So let's just take a look. And what I do usually when I'm in this mode is I go to the window, different scrolling to be continuous scrolling. So this is what I would be doing. I would just put this in touch, and then I would just do the
by my side. I'm sure by now that you get the gist, that you sure are missed. The beginning of my life, you were.
So you'll see as it goes along, any notes that are low, and you can see, obviously, that note is louder than that note. So, you know, I have a visual as it's going by, as you know, with this scrolling mode, I can see what's coming up, and I usually just try to do this just one pass and then maybe change a few things later. So that's what it ends up looking like, and as I said, it's all done on the VCA, the group master, and not on the individual tracks. So all of this, you'll see here, there's a lower gray, a blue line there. That is matching what's there. You see that line going up and down. So the actual track, this track layer is just straight volume, but then this is adjusting it to go up and down with the group master. So that's what it looks like. You can see the automation that way. Okay, so let's get to the acoustic guitar. The acoustic guitar, you'll see a lot of edits in here. What I did was there was some noises, finger noises in that I wanted to get out. Still in there a little bit, and what I did to get rid of that was in Isotope, the guitar denoise, and I just use this. I don't want to use this on the entire track because it's doing other things that I don't want to. I only want to have just the part that has the issue. Just fix that. I don't want to do the whole entire file. So I just go in and see where is it, and that's the spot where it was, and then I just render it, which has already been done in the track, and then move on, put some fades there, and then move on to the next time. So every time I hear it, I just render it with the Audio Suite Isotope plugin. Works great. I do the same with plosives, like the P's and B's, the puff of air on the microphone with a vocal. I do the same kind of thing. So I didn't really do any timing edits here, but you'll see where I fixed all the little, like, you know, screeches that, to me, it just takes the listener out of the zone of listening. And what I'm trying to do is enhance the emotion, enhance the feeling, and hearing a squeak every, you know, 10 or 20 seconds is, to me, that it just kind of destroys the mood. So they're not completely gone, but they're reduced quite a bit where they don't poke out too much. You'll see here again, I did the same thing with the automation, bringing it, you know, I just go through every single track and bring up the you know, the best parts of what I want it to do in the song. Sometimes it's down more, or in the verse, or bring it up in the bridge, whatever I'm doing creatively. So let's take a look at what I did with the guitar. So as normal, like I said, the Fab filter just bringing out some resonances. There's more here than usual. That's kind of typical with an acoustic guitar. And then I felt like it needed to be warmed up a bit. So we haven't talked about this yet, but I did some tape saturation with the Studer A800. That's kind of subtle, but it all adds up when everything's all together. Here we have an 1176 type from Overloud. So you'll see on the meter there, I'm not really doing that much. Usually when I'm compressing, I don't really go more than 3 dB of compression, unless I'm really crushing it like you've seen on some of the others, like that LA2A with the bass. That's like minus 20 dB. But anyway, this one is around -1 or so. It's barely touching it, but it is bringing up some of the low stuff, low volume notes that are being played. And then after that, I'm doing a little EQ. So you'll see the same structure as I talked about before, is fixing the sound with the notches, then adding a little bit of compression if needed, and then add the additive EQ, bring out the frequencies that you want to boost. That combination is a good starting combination for any sound, any track. Here I'm doing a little bit something different here. It really just the sound of going through this plugin, the Abbey Road Studios plugin from Waves, it just adds a sound to it, which I like. And I'm doing a little bit here, bringing down a little bit of 128. I'm not really doing much EQ. It's just what it sounds like going through the plugin. I am compressing here a little bit as well. Another plugin that I found that's really good for that, just like you put it through there and it sounds great without doing anything, it just adds some flavor to it, is the Fairchild plugin. Those are they kind of do that. Okay, let's talk about some effects and reverb, which we haven't gotten into too much yet, except the Bricasti on the drums. The bass have no effects in terms of delays or reverb, besides that micro pitch shift. So first thing I'm doing is I'm bringing the acoustic guitar to the Ocean Way Studios plugin, which is down here. I bring all my reverbs at the bottom because they're not for one specific, like it's not just the guitar going to that reverb. So I don't put it next to the guitar. That's just the style of how I keep everything in my session organized. So down here in blue, you'll see these are all the reverbs that I'm using. So on this one, this is the Ocean Way. Before going into the Ocean Way one, there was a little bit too much lows from the guitar and the other things going in. So I brought that down. If you're getting too much like into your reverb or too much like low end thumps into the reverb, this is a good way. Just put a filter in front of it and get rid of that before going in. And then that's the actual Ocean Way Studios plugin from Universal Audio. Ocean Way Studios Studio B, now known as United Recording, is my favorite place to record drums. So I use this quite a bit because I'm familiar with the sound and they did a great job capturing that. Let's take a look at what else I'm doing, and then I'll just play the guitar so you can hear some of that stuff. Okay, so the Lexicon 480, let's take a look at that. Another thing that, I love the Lexicon actual hardware reverbs. I don't have one here in the studio yet. There might be. As you know, the studio is ever expanding. Anyone that owns a studio knows that there's always more gear coming in. So who knows? Someday I might have a 480L. So this it's at 1.4 seconds, and the high frequencies are cut. You'll see here, HFC. Anything above 4.4K is kind of being reduced. So that's what I'm using on the guitar. Let's hear the guitar. I'll take off all these effects, and I'll get to the large church and the other one next. Now, this large church one is actually, that's the automation for the send to the reverb. So in other words, you'll see here, it's down, that's the reverb right there, the level, and that's showing it there, that level, that line way down there. This reverb is not used until the very last chord. So let me show you what that sounds like, and that's going on with several instruments, but let me show you what that sounds like in the song.
The other side, just for the day, to see your face and hear what you'd say.
So that long reverb is a combination of the large church and a delay that I have. So let's take a look at that, see what those settings are. So just in general, what I do because I have a template, like my own template that I start with, so I don't have to build all these reverbs, every single time. So I have a whole bunch of starting reverbs, and then I either, use them, don't use them, change the settings per song, but at least I have a starting place. And the large church is basically the longer reverb. So all wet, obviously, because of how I'm using it as an aux. And a small pre-delay of 28 milliseconds. So this is the larger one. I have like a very short reverb, I have a medium reverb, a large, I have different delays. So I can easily try things out as I'm building the mix. I can try that, like, oh no, that one doesn't work, it's too long. I can either change the settings, the parameters in that plugin, or just go to another plugin. So that's what I have that for. So it's like starting places. That delay is here, Echo Boy, which I use for the echoes. I'm using Echo Boy, Echo Farm. That's that long Echo Boy delay. Another Echo Farm. This is on the vocal, actually. We'll get to that in a little bit. And then I have some special ones here, kind of harmonizing and making some magic. That's on the vocal as well, and so isn't this on the vocal at a low level. So let's get into a little bit more before we continue on with the tracks, is why did I put this reverb here? Why did I do that? As the song is about, a lost loved one, someone that has passed away, what I wanted to do in the song is find which elements in the song, which tracks, which instruments can I use to bring out that emotion. And a great one that is going to do that is the next one that we're going to talk about, is the steel guitar. But also it's what I do with the reverbs. I have on the vocal, on the steel guitar, the acoustic guitar, I have reverbs that are just on maybe one or two words on the vocal, or a few spots just to emphasize what was just said lyrically or what's happening musically, to make it a little bit different. And those little things along the way is what just makes the mix dynamic in terms of, it keeps the listener involved in in the song, because really it's all about the song. All I'm trying to do is enhance the lyrics of the song. I'm not doing I'm not putting in effects just to put in effects. That's a wrong reason to use an effect. I just got this new plugin and I have to use it. You know, that's no reason to to use the plugin. It has to work for the song, and that's in every single instance that I have here. I'm doing something to do that, enhance the lyrics. So at the end here,
The side, just for the day, to see your face and hear what you'd say.
to see your face and see what you'd say, right? That's kind of like the end lyric there. I don't want the song to end so soon there. I want there to be a longer reverb and let the listener, let that lyric really soak in to them hearing it, so they really get the full impact of the lyric. So that's why I put that there. This next acoustic guitar, which is a higher one, so that's just another overdub of the guitar, both together. And for this, I'm using what is basically a distressor, which is an incredible piece of hardware, and this is a great replication of that. You can see I'm boosting a lot of the level. I'm at 4:1 here, but I'm also adding a little bit of soft clipping here and a little bit more on the attack to really get more attack. But it's very low. You can see it's low volume in the recording. And I could have, you know, sometimes I do add like clip gain, but in this case I did it with the arouser. Okay, so now let's get to really the main part of this song in terms of getting the emotion from the song, and that's the steel guitar. Let me play a little bit of this on its own. When I was listening and writing my original notes, when I was listening to the demo, this was something that came out to me as, okay, that is something that can really get the emotion from the song. Back at the demo,
I'll never forget, 'cause all of you is in all of me. But sometimes it's hard.
it's there, but it's not prominent in the mix.
I'll never forget, 'cause all of you is in all of me. But sometimes it's hard to stay happy. Is in all of me. But sometimes it's hard to stay happy when I think of all.
So you'll see I'm switching something here, and you might be wondering what that is. That is a Dad Mom. It's a monitor controller for Dadman software. So, and the way I've set it up is I can listen to different things on different buttons here. So I have the rough mix over here, and then I have, you know, my mix here in progress. So I can always go back and listen to the demo if I need to see, am I missing anything? Or, you know, sometimes there might be a track there that I don't even have that track in the session that I need to still get from the producer or artist. So, so I'm able to continually just go back and forth. It makes it easy. So the steel guitar, let's see what I'm doing with this. I am bringing down the very lows, but then a few notches in the middle, doing a little compression. And then some EQ, really just for the high end, 5K and above, filtering a little bit below 27 there as well. In terms of effects, I'm using the Smallwood Room. Let's go back. Let's go down and see that. There's two reverbs I'm using on this. The Smallwood Room, which is a Lexicon 480 L program. You see right there, it's 0.8 seconds, and it's modeled after a wooden room, so it has a different reflection sound. And then also I have this TSAR, the True Stereo Algorithmic Reverb from Softtube, and this is kind of adding another layer. This one has a little bit more a dense feel to it. So the two together, sometimes I'll just use one reverb, but sometimes I like to make a soundscape where there's 2 or 3 reverbs at once. Maybe one's short or one's just reflections, and then maybe the other one has a delay on it, pre-delay, with something way in the background. It makes like another added depth to the mix. It's not just left and right and front, forward. There's a lot of elements that are going on even just with 2 speakers. On here also, I did some automation going into the delay quite a bit, you'll see. That's the automation right there, going to the special delay. So that's like one thing that I decided, this is what's really gonna make the steel guitar stand out, besides right here, my fader moves, which really do, more crescendo is just more impact. It was played very well, but I felt like it needed more, and that's what happens in the mix stage. So in the beginning, you'll hear that delay.
I wanna go to the other side.
It just kind of automatically sets the mood of the song. You'll see it in the whole song here.
I wanna go to the other side.
So it gives that otherworldly feel, which is exactly what she's talking about with the lyrics. So that's how I'm enhancing the lyric and enhancing the song. The listener, they understand that, they get it, but they might not know exactly, what was done to make them feel a certain way and feel connected to the song. But I'm doing that on purpose. I'm aware of what techniques to do that. But the listener might just feel like, wow, this is a great song. That's good enough. That's all they need to know, right? Really, do they like the song or not? Can they connect with the song lyrically? Part of that is, Carrie Flaherty's amazing vocal performance here. But of course, I enhance it in the mix as much as I can. Okay, now let's get to the last instrument before we get to the vocal. And that is the electric guitar here, another layer.
You sure I'm in.
So this is just like an added flavor that was done in the production, which is great. I love it. It adds something different. And that also is going to the Galaxy 64 AFX over here, which I'm using a TLA 100 type compressor and also an API 550 type EQ. You can see I'm boosting 7K, a little bit of 5K, a little bit of 700, and 400. That's all happening on that guitar. Let's take a look at that. I'll play it once with it muted, bypassed, and then once with it in. So it really does make, a big difference in the sound. Now, something I did on this, which is different than I've done on any of the other tracks, is I've done some, I don't know if I really call it reamping, although that is the process. I added a guitar pedal. So to do that, I took this original sound. Right here, you'll see that. That's the routing to it. That's the output. That goes to the Goliath HD, which then sends it to an Earthquaker Devices pedal. Okay, so sometimes I like to add some different sounds with guitar pedals in mixing. This just happens to be a guitar, but I also do it on bass, on vocals, keyboards, all kinds of instruments. It doesn't have to be on guitar. Just in this instance, it is guitar. So I did go through the Earthquaker Devices pedal and the Avalanche Run. I did want to use the Ghost Echo for some reason because it just happens to have the ghost in the title, but it didn't work, and you can't force it. Like I said, don't just use it, because it's something new or whatever. It has to fit in the song. So I'm using Avalanche Run and a single in, stereo out, and I'll show you what that sounds like with the guitar. Okay, the guitar has other echoes on there, so let me just play only what's coming back from the pedal. Now you'll see here, there's audio here because after I use the pedal, I record it. Because anyone that's used guitar pedals, it's very difficult to recall that exactly. So once I get the great sound with it, I record it. And then if I need to go back and change it, I usually take a picture of it so I have what the settings are visually, but I record it so if that doesn't change in the recall, I don't have to worry about it. So this is that sound only. So now let's do that with the guitar. I'll take the other delay off of the guitar so you hear what that is. So it's there to add some space, some extra flavor. It's not supposed to be super loud in the mix because this guitar was recorded very well and can stand on its own. I just wanted to add a little bit more stereo depth to it and give it a little of a delay besides the other delay that I have here, which I believe is Echo Boy. One thing we didn't talk about yet is this Sunset Sound reverb. I'm not really using it as a reverb. Similar to the Ocean Way one, the Sunset Sound room it's basically just the sound of the room. I'm not using it as like, the chamber. I'm using the live room as the sound. I find that, guitars really sound good in the Sunset Sound plugin. They did a great job with that. So let's get to the vocal. The vocal is something that I still kind of do a layer thing, and it's probably different than what anything else you've seen from other people. So I'll explain it, and I'm sure there'll be questions about this. So first of all, let me just show you, like I said, this is the actual session. So this is it's not cleaned up for MixCon. This is the real session. This is the lead vocal that I originally got. I keep these in the session in case I have to go back to it. And then the next one down is I used the RX 8 isotope to get rid of any kind of low hum any kind of mouth noise. I don't do that as a plugin. I do that as the RX Connect. So that's a processed. This right here is a processed vocal. So then the next one is here. This is just, you know, as it happens in the timeline. That one first, that one second. In case I have to go back a step, I can easily go back a step if something didn't sound right or whatever. This here is, is tuned. Carey is a great singer, and I personally didn't really know if it needed any tuning, but we did a slight bit of tuning on the vocal, which almost every artist does. And that was done by Alex Hooton, which is like, he's a great producer and one of the absolute best vocal tuning people I know, for sure. But he is a producer in his own right. That's his main thing. And so I had him tune it. Once that was tuned, then I brought it back into the actual track that's in the mix. So if for some reason there was, let's say I send the artist the mix and they say, you know what, maybe there's a better vocal take on that one line. Let's go back and I'll give you another vocal take on just, you know, one phrase. Well, then I have to go through that series of steps again. So at least I can do that, and I'll know in the timeline if I can take, you know, timeline in terms of this, where I can kind of just fit that in, and I'll only use the smallest amount that's new, and then put that in and match the sound. So none of those first three are used in the mix. This is the one that we hear. This is what I'm calling the lead vocal source, okay, because that is going to feed all of these buses right here. You'll see they're all pre-fade. This fader is down all the way. So we're only hearing it through these buses. Each bus is doing something a little different, which you'll see, but each one of these is all pre-fade. And here what I'm really doing is getting the basic sound of the vocal before it goes into those auxes. So here, some sibilants and some other notches that, frequencies that I wanted to take out a little bit. And then I added this a little bit more. Then I did some additive EQ, adding a little bit of 180, 680, and then high end from 5K up. And then this one I use the Chandler Limited Curve Bender to add a little bit more of the low end. So sometimes I need a little more of the low end, especially on certain phrases on her vocal. That is typical of someone singing high. You need to maybe bring up a little bit of the lows in that area. And then this was just for some dynamic EQ. I'll just play a little bit of this.
Both were tough and fought in the war, but I wish I got the chance to know you more. Is it possible to miss Grandpa's unit?
So up here is doing a little bit of the sibilants, although I do have a de-esser later on in the chain. On the auxes, I'm getting 3K down a little bit and 7.5K. And this is just like a kind of a bump if it gets too much of that frequency, especially after I just boosted, 91. Some things might stick out too much, so that's to kind of keep it under control. So you're probably wondering what is happening with all of these buses. So let's take a look at that. Under here, I have, these are not being used in this mix, but just to show you what I do in my template. If there's a vocal overlap, I put that here. If there's a lead vocal double, I put it here, and a lead vocal double overlap, I put that here. So, and then all of these together will go to those same auxes. This is like the vocal sound. This is the lead vocal and the vocal double. So all of those would go to the same buses, bus 91, 92, 93, 94. So let's take a look at the first one. This is bus 91. This is it's kind of like the smooth part of the vocal sound. You'll see in the comments here, this one's smooth, this one's aggressive, this one's the vocal crush, and then a little bit of distortion there if needed or if wanted. So this is kind of like the smooth sound of the vocal. Why don't I play it and I'll scroll through these plugins. And what I'm going to do is take off all the others. It doesn't sound like the full vocal sound because now we're just hearing one layer of this.
To see your face and hear what you would say. I know you both were tough and fought in the war, but I wish I got the chance to know you more. Is it possible to miss grandpas you never met? But all the stories of you I'll never forget. 'Cause all of you is in all of me.
So that's that vocal layer. It's kind of the smooth, nice vocal sound. And then I add to it more of an aggressive layer. You'll see here, like above, with one of the overheads of the drums, I had to freeze the tracks. So let me show you what that looks like here, just for the purposes of me showing you. Let's open this, which is an exact duplicate of what's above. And again, I'll play the vocal. This is more the aggressive sound.
I know you both were tough and fought in the war, but I wish I got the chance to know you more. Is it possible to miss grandpas you never met? But all the stories of you I'll never forget. 'Cause all of you is in all.
So this one doesn't have a lot of, or hardly actually any reverb on this one. I say aggressive, it doesn't sound that aggressive there, but when you add it to the other one, it makes the vocal pop out of the center of the mix more. That's what the function of that is. If I feel like it's like the vocal's not popping out of the mix as much, I can just bring up the volume of this layer. Right now we're looking at ascend level. Let's look at the volume. So I can just bring up this if I feel like it's not coming out as much out of the center. This is kind of a way that I've come up with from, I've learned from some of the great engineers along the way and producers, people like Bruce Swedin, Al Schmidt, Mick Gazowski, Phil Ramone, some of those people. So I've used a little bit of these tricks from different people and kind of made it my own, and then it's morphed, throughout the years. This is similar to having a vocal on an analog console be just multed to other channels to do different things. Maybe a delay, add a delay on just a word, or in the chorus have a different sound of the vocals. You can have the faders go up and down, verse, chorus. So that's kind of where this came from. And so they all make the vocal sound. So that's what's happening there. Let's take a look at this Acoustica Audio. Brown, it's called. This is just giving it more like, it's like, compressing it, bringing it forward, and adding, a preamp sound here.
I got the chance to know you more. Is it possible to miss grandpas you never met? But all the stories of you I'll never forget. 'Cause all of you is in.
Obviously there's a big volume change in that. So I'm not trying to A-B like I said before, but it shows, it's really coming out and making it jump out in the mix a little bit, not in a bad way, but so you can focus on that vocal no matter what else is going on in the track. Another Acoustica Audio one I'm using here is this Pultec style EQ, which sounds great. This one's called Purple. So now let's go to the next one, which is a vocal crush. I'll play it and show you what I'm doing.
Miss grandpas you never met, but all the stories of you I'll never forget. 'Cause all of you is in all of me. But sometimes it's hard to stay happy when I think of all.
So the vocal crush is really just bringing up words that may be softer. That's kind of, I have that down, that's minus 15 dB down. It's, the relative levels of these change from mix to mix. Let's go make that. And then I have the distortion track, which is doing a little bit what I did with the bass. But instead of using the LA2A, I'm using the Sound Toys Decapitator. I'll bring that up in level.
I know you both were tough and fought in the war, but I wish I got the chance to know you more.
So on its own, it sounds horrible unless you're going for a distorted vocal sound. But added into the mix, it gives it a little bit more weight. So let's just play the whole vocal on its own.
Just for the day, to see your face and hear what you would say. I know you both were tough and fought in the war, but I wish.
So you'll see all of these buses, right, from the source. Let's just go back for 1 second. That's the vocal source track, and that feeds all of these buses, and then all of these buses are a group, and they go what's called the lead vocal chains, and that's where I do my fader rides. And really what I'm trying to do with the fader rides, you'll see here better, is I'm trying to get, every word so you can hear it in the.
As for my great grandma, you're my biggest inspiration. I wish I had a time machine so I could go back and say it. For all you went through and hell that you'd seen, you took the devil's candy and turned the back.
Especially at the ends of phrases, usually those just naturally get softer in volume with any singer. So I like to kind of bring those up, especially if I'm trying to get more emotion out of the performance. In terms of what I have with effects on the vocal, I have altiverb, some of the same delays, which I showed you down here before, but let's just take a look real quick. The Eventide 949, that's just adding like a little bit of a harmonization. This is like a slapback echo, just to make it thicker. And then on the altiverb is modeled after a DN780, which is very short. I have it as a short reverb, so it's not that long. Still kind of an intimate sound, but it also does go into places like this. Maybe that's better here, where it feeds into a longer reverb. I'll show you that right now.
I didn't want it. Now that you get the gist, that you sure are missed.
Those kind of things I think are bringing the listener, it's bringing more of that emotion in the song. Soloed it sounds maybe a little weird with the with the delays, but here it is in the song.
By now that you get the gist, that you sure are missed.
So that line to me is very important. That's something that I would have written down when I saw the demo, when I listened to the demo. You sure are missed. That's an important line. And even after that, in the production and the arrangement, they leave a little bit of space for, instrumentation. So you kind of let that sink into the listener. I want to enhance that. So to make sure, that that doesn't go by the listener and they just tune out, they kind of grabs their attention a bit. So I do that each time. You can see there, that same line, I do the same. On the harmonies, beautiful harmony. Play this for you.
And fought in the war, but I wish I got the chance to know you more. Is it possible to miss grandpas you never met? But all the stories of you I'll never forget. So
that's it's just a great harmony line. Now the oohs that Carey added, here I wanted to make more of a, more in the soundscape. I'll play that for you.
Get the gist that you sure are missed.
So if you'll see the panning when I'm doing, it's panning left to right as it's sung.
That you get the gist that you sure are missed.
Now that layered with the steel guitar actually makes a beautiful sound. Let's see if I can get that. Let's see, with the steel guitar. Here we go, the steel guitar with that ooh. So the two together kind of start the same, and then it steel guitar continues on with another phrase. But the two of those together make a beautiful sound, and I wanted to make sure that really, came out in the mix, because that's just part of more of the elements that make it what it is. So let's take a look at what I'm doing on the mix bus. That's all the elements there. For the mix bus, what I'm doing is, this is the master, basically the master fader. That's what's feeding to the analog summing. All of these tracks are played in Pro Tools, but they all go to analog summing with the Chandler Limited. So in the back of the studio here, I have 48 channels of analog summing, and 32 of it is with the Chandler Limited. That's what all of the whole entire mix is going through that, and then captured back into Pro Tools through the Antelope Audio Pure 2, which is a stereo converter. That comes back in here, and I'll show you what I'm doing on the mix bus. On the mix bus, this is something I've been doing over the last couple of years now, is if something in the whole mix bus is bothering me, a certain frequency, I kind of take care of it there. Most of the time I don't need to. I do add a little bit of flavor from tape sound, which I like. And then the massive passive. Someday I will have a real massive passive in the room. There's a space in the rack for it. But for now, I'll use the plugin, which sounds great. Let me show you what this sounds like with and without the massive passive.
Right by my side, I'm sure by now that you get the gist, that you sure are
So here I'm doing all additive EQ. I'm adding a little bit of low end at 150, a little bit of 820, up in the highs, around 9K, I have a boost, and then all the way up, 27K. Way up. So just a little air, basically. That's something that would usually be kind of done in mastering, but I'm doing it here as part of the mix. You'll notice there's no compression here. No compressor, no limiting. That is what I have on the next step. So this allows me to print 2 mixes at the same time. That is the print that would go to the mastering engineer. Then that is routed here to an Oxford limiter, and then that gets printed here. So this has the limiter on it, the one above it doesn't. Whatever I'm sending to the mastering engineer, I don't want limiting on it because that's what they're going to do. And one limiter added onto another limiter never sounds good. It gets grainy and it's just unclear. It doesn't sound good. So I always send something to the mastering engineer without the limiter. Of course, you're probably wondering, well, why put a limiter on it? I want to send it to the producer and the artist or the record label with a little bit of limiting on it. As you see here, I have 2 dB. That's not that much. I'm still keeping the dynamics of the mix. I'm not crushing it, but I'm bringing it more at a level that they may be used to hearing. So they're not like, I don't know, it doesn't have much impact, maybe because they don't have the volume up. So I'm printing both of those at the same time. If you'll see here, I have meters in front of me. One.
I know you both were tough.
One is the durometer over here, but then over here, I have a meter that shows what the level is over time. So it's not a peak or average, it's showing like over time, over the time of the length of the song, 3 or 4 minutes, what is the average throughout the whole entire piece of the song. So I have that, which is important for TV, for film, also for Spotify, and they all have like levels that they want to see. Amazon Prime, they're all a little bit different. But so I have that, so I know what's going on with that. One of the last things that I want to mention here is, besides having a button here for the demo, sometimes an artist will have me reference another song. So in this case, like I say, this is the actual session. This is all the real thing. I have a few Miranda Lambert songs, which was kind of an inspiration, I guess, possibly when producing it, arranging it, or whatever. So I wanted to make sure that it at least kind of had a little bit of not really the feel of it, but not go too far away, not too rock or not too soft or whatever it is, stay in the same kind of zone. Not that Carey's trying to be Miranda. Carey is a great artist as she is, but sometimes people are like, oh, I really love the way that sounds out of my speakers. So I use it as a reference. So as you can see, I'm using a lot of plugins. I'm using digital hardware, the analog summing, the converters from Antelope Audio, which I definitely want to say a thank you to Antelope Audio, who is sponsoring me at MixCon here, and thanks to everyone at MixCon, SonicScoop, for having me. And I know there's going to be questions, and I'm ready for the questions. So I hope you've enjoyed it, learned a lot. As I always say, everyone, including myself, we're always learning all the time. You should be learning every day how to, get your craft to a higher and higher level. So I hope I've helped with that today, and looking forward to hearing from you. Thanks.
All right, that was another killer masterclass with Brian Vibberts. He used a whole bunch of the Antelope Audio effects in there. Of course, the whole Antelope Audio interface and clocking system is the heart and the brain of his system there. I took a lot out of this, so big thanks to Brian for doing this. Big thanks to the singer, Carey, for letting us use this fantastic song as part of this presentation. Big thanks to Antelope Audio for helping make this one free to the public. Thanks to you for joining us. If you want to win thousands of dollars worth of free gear, go over to sonicscoop.com/mixcongiveaway. That's sonicscoop.com/mixcongiveaway, where you can enter for 3 chances to win a whole bunch of great audio gear. For those of you who are catching the live premiere, we have got a live Q&A with Brian coming up right now, so stay tuned for that. Make sure to click the link down below to get over to that live Q&A where you can ask your questions in real time. And of course, if you are watching this in the future, check out that live Q&A anyway. It was awesome. For those of you who are not from the future, it will be awesome. So go check it out now. I hope to see you there. Thanks for hanging out with us. This has been Justin Coletti of Sonic Scoop. See you next time.